We want to talk about a small area of eastern Moldova. Their New Year celebrations were put on ice, quite literally. The separatist enclave of Transnistria remains loyal to Moscow. There's Russian troops on the ground there, and its economy is fully dependent on Russian gas, which comes free. But access to it comes via a transit route that passes Ukraine, and that path was cut in the early hours of New Year's Day. An agreement which was signed in 2019 between Kyiv and the Russian energy giant Gazprom expired. The Ukrainian president refuses to extend it, and so the taps have been turned off. For now, only hospitals and critical infrastructure in Transnistria are being heated, and there is concern over electricity too. The main power plant in Kurchagan is already being fueled by coal instead of Russian gas, but the authorities say there's only enough to fuel it for 50 more days. Don't need to tell you that this is the coldest part of the year too. With us is Martin Vladimirov. He's director of the Energy and Climate Programme at the Centre for the Study of Democracy. Thank you very much for being with us. What more do you know about the situation in Transnistria, first of all, and why are they particularly vulnerable?
Thank you so much for having me. Transnistria has always been fully dependent on the supply of Russian gas through Ukraine, but it's important to note that Gazprom announced that it's going to cut off the supply to the whole of Moldova before even the transit agreement with Ukraine expired. And this move is right out of the Kremlin playbook of creating instability and taking advantage of the over-reliance on one supplier in order to wield political influence. It's a very crucial moment. Moldova can get enough natural gas to Transnistria via an alternative route, the TurkStream, but it will be more expensive, and Gazprom is not helping out. Gazprom wants the situation to go off the rails in order to blame the central government in Chisinau for the potential humanitarian crisis in Transnistria, because the situation is really bad. I mean, the breakaway province has started cutting off heating to some consumers, and the situation is going to go from bad to worse probably in the next month or so.
What sort of temperatures are we talking about at the moment?
Well, they are around freezing, but Moldova is famous for going.
So there's millions of families who are on the edge here. Would the government in Chisinau want to send gas to Transnistria? What is the nature of the relationship at the moment?
Well, the Moldova proper government has always tried to facilitate natural gas supply to Transnistria, even when it doesn't get paid for this supply by the breakaway province. It's a very strange symbiotic relationship in which Transnistria provides 70% of the power supply to the country, to Moldova in general. So Moldova doesn't really have a choice but to ensure the gas supply to the breakaway province. Its potential alternatives is to import electricity from Romania and from Ukraine. But because Russia has been bombing Ukraine's energy infrastructure, the country doesn't have really access generation of electricity. So Romania is the only choice for Moldova, and Transnistria becomes an even more important kind of relationship for the country, for Chisinau. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the whole idea here is to give kind of talking points and disinformation narratives to pro-Russian parties and oligarchic networks within Moldova that would shift the blame to the pro-EU government of Maia Sandu. The country is trying desperately to get away from the Russian orbit and to move closer to accession to the EU. And there are parliamentary elections coming up in July this year.
So it's the same. It's the same playbook as in Georgia, then.
Absolutely, absolutely. The Kremlin always uses similar tactics. It's about leveraging, a strategic supply agreement, leveraging control of energy infrastructure, control of strategic infrastructure to basically destabilize the economies of these regions. Georgia has experienced something similar, Armenia as well. We have seen similar tactics in Belarus. Before the full-fledged invasion of Ukraine, the Kremlin was regularly cutting the supply to Ukraine as well. quoting certain debt, issues and quarrels, which were always exaggerated, and no compromise was sought after by Russia.
It's clearly a very cynical tactic.
Very typical.
It's clearly a very cynical tactic when you're talking about such an energy-rich region. Just very quickly, if you would, obviously, Ukraine at the moment takes some of its electricity from Slovakia, who are pretty annoyed about the fact the gas taps have been turned off, the gas they receive through Ukraine. So what is the tit-for-tat situation there? What effect might that have on Ukraine?
Well, it's important to point out that the security supply for Central Europe, which was based on the transit of Russian gas for Ukraine, is safe. Over the last decade, the region has worked tremendously on building up its connections to Western Europe, to LNG facilities on the Baltic Sea and on the Aegean. So there is no problem of getting alternative gas. The problem is for Slovakia is that they're going to lose roughly 500 million euros in transit revenues, which is the main reason why Slovakia has threatened to stop the power supply to Ukraine. But this is probably a bluff. Because under the EU energy competition rules, this would be a severe breach of the law, and probably Slovakia would face significant consequences from the European Commission. So I don't think this would actually happen, but it was a last-ditch effort by Slovakia to pressure Ukraine into some kind of a deal. Let's not forget the Slovakian government is very pro-Russian, and Slovakia is one of the most pro-Russian countries in terms of...
more instability than at the beginning of the year. Martin, thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you for coming on the programme.